We want it to be the best product, the best corny dog anyone's ever had. And I mean, that means it's fresh, it's made right, it's exactly what they remember.
Good to have your strengths, know your role, but also know that you are a family business and to be respectful and to be patient.
It's not, we don't just want them to buy a corny dog and never come back. We want it to be special, that they share with their family just like I did and come back year after year.
Today we delve into the fascinating world of an iconic Texas business, Fletcher's Original Corny Dogs. Fletcher's Original Corny Dogs are a much-loved staple of the State Fair of Texas. Our guests today are Glenda Fletcher, goes by GG, and her daughter Amber, a third-generation owner of Fletcher's and also the head of marketing for the company. Following the passing of her husband, second-generation owner Skip Fletcher in 2017, GG has been a driving force behind maintaining the legacy and expanding the reach of the company. GG's commitment to the brand's heritage, coupled with her openness to the third generation's leadership and strategic direction, has seen Fletcher's Original Corny Dogs grow beyond its State Fair roots to new venues and partnerships. Amber has been immersed in the family business from a young age as she grew up, as she would say, sticking dogs with the family at the Fletcher's State Fair venue. She's leveraged that experience combined with an education at Texas Women's University to help modernize the brand's marketing strategies. The company has introduced new products like the Veggie Dog and the Dallas Hot Bird Dog, catering to an evolving consumer taste while maintaining the traditional quality that Fletcher's is known for. Fletcher's has also expanded to a year-round business through pop-up events, catering, mobile food trailers, and retail sales, and also in venues inside some very large college football stadiums like University of Texas and University of Oklahoma. Amber's leadership style balances innovation with a deep respect for her family's legacy. Join us as we dive into their journey, exploring the insights and the experiences in their family business and the enduring legacy of Fletcher's Original Corny Dogs. It's so great to have the two of you with us. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and our timing for this interview is perfect because the 2024 State Fair is now in the books. It ran from September 27th through October 20th. Is that right? 20 days, 24 days? Yeah. What's this time of year like before, during, and after the fair? I mean, it's such a big event for you guys. Can you give us a sense for what your life is like around the fair?
Sure, I can start that. It's just constant movement, constant getting ready. The fair starts, on that first day, but it takes us a couple of months to get ready. We start setting up for our fair 1st of July, and then there's much paperwork, there's hiring. We have about 200 employees during the state fair time, that's 24 days. So we start the 1st of August with our hiring and just, work all the way through in hopes that we'll have enough people, and we normally do. And there's just a lot of prep. Mm-hmm. There's getting all of the paperwork together, there's contracts to sign, there's policy and procedure packets to go through and edit every year, because there's always change,
mm-hmm.
that has to be added to that with the changing of times. And so it just builds, the excitement builds, and we are very excited, about it every year. And we're back and forth, to Fair Park and back, to our office, taking care of and watching and making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do.
Well, and you guys shared that you're normally there all 24 days. So that's just got to be a blur of a busy time for the two of you.
It really is a blur. And, the hours are usually 10 to 10 at the fair. And, sometimes she'll call me 8 o'clock at night and she's like, Amber, you don't have to stay out there. And it's the most important 24 days. And sleep is important, but, it's just 24 days. So we really all seem to push ourselves kind of to the extreme. There's so much going on. There's so much that could happen. I feel like I need to be there every single second, whether it's an emergency here or maybe something going on over there. Or I also have friends that work out there. And so often when she's like, Amber, you don't have to work so hard. Well, we're walking around eating, corny dogs and pizza. So I don't work.
Well, I know you do, because you shared with me that you're just now still recovering, getting over those 24 days. So I'm glad you're able to be with us and you're fairly recovered. I want to get into the history of Fletcher's a little bit. So, Amber, your grandfather, Neil Fletcher, invented the Corny dog in 1942. What inspired him to invent a Corny dog, and how did he end up selling it at the State Fair of Texas?
Well, he was actually a fifth generation performer. He was in vaudeville and called himself a song and dance man. He actually married into another family of performers, and they just went around the country performing. Ultimately, they moved to Dallas, and they were performing at the State Fair of Texas in 1937 and 1938. I believe he was in his late 30s, and it was towards kind of the end of vaudeville. Things were moving from tent shows to, well, I think the fire marshal tried to shut them down. But, and he was performing at the State Fair when someone offered him an opportunity for a food booth. And so it was said that over a bottle of bourbon that he and his brother, began to brainstorm about what they could bring to the State Fair of Texas, and that they were inspired by a local dish that was cornbread baked in the ear of corn. And they just kind of had this idea of developing a batter, getting a hot dog, putting it on a stick and deep frying it, and it becoming a portable food item. Wow. And so it was just through inspiration, and I think he even said just kind of silly luck that he came upon it. And then he introduced it in 1942 and said that folks didn't even know what it was. They had to cut them up in bite-sized pieces and give them away. And I always kind of imagined that his vaudeville experience, I kind of imagine like a man like selling snake oil out there calling the people in.
Come try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. It must have been really good bourbon.
Yeah.
Come up with that invention. So,
Right.
So you share with me that there was a celebrity at this year's State Fair that tried it for the first time and was surprised there was a hot dog in the middle. Do you want to share that story real quickly?
Sure. Dave Portnoy, who's the founder of Barstool Sports, he was there for the Red River rivalry game. And the day before, he was going around trying a bunch of vendors' food. And we were on his list to have a Corny dog. And, first thing he did was he put ketchup on it. And then he took a bite and he said, "Oh, there's a hot dog in there." But he was very, very nice. He gave us a 7.3 rating, which I hear is fantastic.
That is excellent.
But the best thing is the brand awareness. I mean, multiple articles came out of it, and just the brand awareness on social media. So it was pretty incredible.
Well, I heard his comment exploded, and people were really getting on him for not knowing there was a hot dog inside the.
I mean, who's never even heard of a corn dog or
Clearly
a Corny
he's not
dog?
from Texas, yeah.
No, clearly not.
So GG, you're from a small town in East Texas, Mineola, and you grew up eating Fletcher's Corny dogs at the State Fair. You shared that when you married Skip in 1978 that you immediately started working in the family business. What were your first impressions of the business?
What have I gotten myself into? Because it was nothing that I'd ever experienced. I was born in Mineola, a very small town. And we would come up with the school or with my parents about every other year, not every year. And that was what we did. We had chicken for lunch, and then we had Corny dogs at Fletcher's for our evening meal right before we left. And it was a great family time. But it was different because I'd been to the fair, but I had no idea of the background of the fair.
And what went into
it, and yeah, it was a little overwhelming. I was a flight attendant before that. Well, actually, at that same time, so I was still flying, and was doing that part time. But it was exciting because there's just such an energy there, and I was immediately put on the cash stand. That's because we had cash back then. We didn't operate with coupons. I always tell the story that I didn't get moved to the back office for about 3 years because I was on probation from Neil, the creator, yeah.
They wanted you out front with
They
the
wanted
people.
me out front, yeah, absolutely. But it was really wonderful. It was exciting.
That's cool. Amber, so what are some of your earliest memories? You grew up sticking dogs at the State Fair. What are some of your earliest memories of selling Corny dogs with your family?
As a child, I just remember I was so excited. I couldn't sleep. It was my favorite place on earth. I would count the landmarks just driving to the fair, and just like my heart was exploding as I was getting closer. And I just, even as a young child, was just so immersed. I was so in love with the sounds and the sights and the smells. And then also, you know, as a small child, you know, my dad would be gone for 24 days and it felt like forever. And so it was an opportunity for me to see my dad. And no matter how busy we were and how important the fair's, you know, revenue is for our family business, he never, he always took the time to walk around with my brother and I, and he would play games with us and put us on rides and feed us corny dogs and just, you know, introduce us to people, even as children. I do remember one time I really wanted this stuffed animal dog, and he had probably spent $100 trying to win it, and he just could not. So I think eventually he just handed over another $100 bill, and I got this stuffed animal that was about, you know, bigger than I was, and I was proud, and I think he was too.
And thanks for sharing that. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. For a little girl to be able to go to work at the state fair, you know, how exciting can that be? Well, what valuable lessons did you learn during those years that you still carry forward and use in your leadership in the company today?
I think the biggest thing is, and I don't know which one's more important. I feel they're equally important, and I feel like one of them is the quality of the product. We want it to be the best product, the best corny dog anyone's ever had. And I mean, that means it's fresh, it's made right, it's exactly what they remember. And so the quality, but then also it's the customer experience and the happiness and satisfaction of the customer. I feel like both of those are so important. And I watch those with my dad too, because he would just be on everyone about the quality of the product. He would go around just as I do now and my brother does. And we're so intense with the quality. But then it's also the customer experience. And we just want them to, we feel that we're building memories with them. And so we want it to be a good memory. You know, I've always said we're in the return customer business. And it's not, we don't just want them to buy a corny dog and never come back. We want it to be special, that they share with their family just like I did and come back year after year.
Well, and I know that's the case because some of our family's memories are built around Fletcher's corny dogs. And I've even heard that you guys have been asked to cater weddings because the dog was so important to the bride and groom and venues like that. So yeah, and I think that's really probably fueled a lot of your expansion, is how people appreciate the quality and the memories that they get from the state fair and the Fletcher's corny dog. The two go hand in hand. So Gigi, you've been part of the family for long enough to have worked with all three generations.
I have.
Of owners, yeah. So what are the values and standards that have remained consistent through the three generations that's enabled the business to continue to flourish?
I think the big thing is what Amber's talking about, is the quality of our product. And then also the traditions that have been built, as you mentioned, with families. And as I was listening to her, I was just thinking about, you know, it has a name now. It's building that experience of that tradition. When I first started, you know, there was no social media, all of that. And it was about the quality and people coming out, but we didn't realize it was an experience that didn't have a title. And I think that's been a really big factor, because this generation, I know Amber and my son and my nephew, they're always out in the crowd. I mean, they're standing in the lines with the customers. How's your corny dog? What are you doing? What brings you out here today? And sometimes we even give out little bracelets and things like that, because they sometimes stand in the line for a little while. So I think that's a really big factor, because without that experience, you can have a good product, but there's got to be something else that brings them out there to pay for parking and do all of the things they do, and to stand there in our line and want their picture taken for social media, you know, with a corny dog. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I
difference.
Totally agree. It is for our family. I mean, you don't go to the state fair without having a Fletcher's corny dog. You just don't. And you talked about the memories that people have around that. And I can never remember a time when it just wasn't a great experience. Your people that work there, how friendly they are, and how they make you feel welcome, and how they make it a happy event for you to get that corny dog. So I can see that. It's hard to continue through three generations. I mean,
it is hard.
Very few family businesses make it to the third generation. I mean, is there anything else that you think makes Fletcher's a rare exception to that very few businesses make it to the third generation? Well,
all the things that I just said, I think, are very important. I think a big factor for any family business is being able to keep the family together. And so we have, my nephew and his family, and then it's Aaron and Amber and us. And, and someday it'll be just them. And so I've always felt like my goal, knowing that they were coming up and in hopes that would continue, was to help them and encourage them to rise to their strengths. That's what I always told them. You're not all going to want to do the same thing, which is a good thing, as it's turned out. Some of you aren't going to want to do as much. You don't have as much interest. And so that was a goal of mine. And I just really seeing that happen, because we live in, different parts of Texas, not far away. But outside of the business, it's hard to keep that family together because everybody's got their children and doing other things. So I was really pleased, just a little story that I was pleased about this year, because we very rarely during the fair have time to spend time together. So the last day of the fair, we were out there and somebody said, let's go over to the Discovery Garden. They've got a beer garden over there. And we went, okay. And it just happened to be all of us.
That's great.
Yeah, and it was just so rewarding to watch the interactions. They had a moment to laugh and then just talk about different things and talk about the business. And it's very encouraging.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because it's one thing to run a business as a family, but it's so important to have the family stay together.
Yes,
and,
it's the most
and
important.
be family and away from the business. And that's hard to do when you're all in the business.
It is.
So very well done in making that a priority for your family.
Thanks.
I can see that's why a lot of families don't make it to third
It's exactly
generation.
why they don't. It's tough.
Yep.
Well, could I add to it?
Yes,
real
please.
Quick? Well, for me, I feel like a legacy business, I feel that all of us are very passionate about the brand itself. And I think we're so emotionally tied. It means so much to us. And I think with a legacy brand, it's something that calls us to be bigger. It calls us to kind of look outside of what we want and to focus on what's best for the brand, what's best for the customer. And I think we've all done really well with kind of putting some things aside because we're seeing the bigger picture of how much it means. And so I think it calls us to be more than, like, I'm trying to think of how to say it, but like it calls us to be more.
Yeah.
And to think outside of just what we want, because it has such a meaning for other families. But I think all of it, we just love it so much.
Yeah. Well, that's to love the business, but to protect the brand versus selfish interests.
Right, exactly.
Is so important. You guys are obviously very good at that. So Amber, as an adult, why did you choose to come into the business?
I mean, it's all I've wanted to do. My parents encouraged me from a young age to do whatever I wanted. I always loved the family business. I did get my degree in health science, thinking I would be a health coach, and quickly started selling fried food 12 months out of the year, which is just, I love it. But it's all I've ever wanted to do. I loved working the fair. I loved working with my parents. I feel that they were such incredible mentors and they taught us so much. And I just visualized, I saw myself doing this job until I retired.
So as a co-owner and the head of marketing, how do you balance the responsibility? And it's a big responsibility of preserving the family's legacy in the brand while also driving innovation and the growth of the brand that you just talked about. I mean, the brand has changed, and we'll talk about some of the new venues that you've got, but it's not just the state fair now, it's a year-round brand.
Right.
So how do you balance responsibility of preserving that legacy yet have changed the business in some major ways, you and your brother?
Well, and I think that it has even changed since when my brother and I took over more responsibility. I think every year it changes just a little bit. I think we very much want to honor the past and our current consumer that have been eating our product for, decades. And so we are so big into preserving the history and the legacy. And at the same time, we do want it to carry on to the next generation. And so I think that is just participating more in community events and giving back more to the community. I don't think it's jumping on all these trends on social media because I feel we already have a voice. And I think it's just educating new people on who we are and continuing that legacy and people coming out and enjoying the product. But I think it's that by going out and doing more local events, you're exposing new people to Texas, to new families. And so hopefully by just continuing with our values of who we are now, and just being firm in the company that we are, hopefully new people will come in and will like it as well. But at the same time, I've always said we do what our customers want. They want a veggie dog, we make a veggie dog. They want, a turkey one, we gave them turkey. They want us to come to Fort Worth, we come to Fort Worth. And so we're really just doing what our customers
They want to buy it in the grocery store. They can buy it in the grocery store now, right? Retail
Well, we don't do grocery stores.
Where you do have retail sales, don't you? Some retail sales.
We do Gold Belly, which is nationwide shipping, but we're not in local grocery stores.
Okay.
But we do ship nationwide. And everywhere from Hawaii to Alaska to New York to California, we've shipped to all 50 states. And so, but I think it's just by continuing people's experiences and getting to have them.
Yeah. COVID-19 pandemic caused a lot of food-related businesses to go out of business. Mm-hmm. You guys, Fletcher's was able to survive that difficult time through the creation of a second company, FCD Events LLC.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that. That's an interesting story.
Well, in 2019, my brother and I, we lost our dad in 2017, mm-hmm. and both of us always knew we wanted to be in the family business. And while we participated and we were very guided and led by our parents and we're active in the company, we weren't really decision makers. Even if we had something though, like the veggie dog, my dad was very open to change and to mm-hmm. learning new things. But so when it became our turn to start doing more with the company, my brother and I always wanted food trucks and food trailers. They were big in New York and Chicago and other mm-hmm. cities, and they were getting bigger in Dallas. And we just wanted to kind of participate and see how the community would respond. And so we got 2 food trucks in 2019, and we're so excited. We built up so many events and catering opportunities, and then COVID hit. And, essentially everything we had planned that whole year for the next year, was just wiped out and canceled. Mm-hmm. And, the whole world was just kind of on hold. And mm-hmm. I know it was very devastating and a lot of companies struggled. But I think we were in a unique position where we were still able to operate if we were outdoors. People were following the guidelines at the time. And we just started getting requests from all over DFW, can you come to this parking lot? We went to an Atwoods in Waxahachie or Corsicana mm-hmm. and just sat in a parking lot for 8 hours and had lines of people. And we had to set up tents because it was hot, and we had water, and people were, social distancing. And it helped spread the message that we weren't just at the state fair mm-hmm. anymore, and that we were doing more things. And so in some ways, it was a catalyst to get that message out that we were in the community.
As you look back and think of the timing of that decision to get those trucks in 2019, how incredible was that to prepare mm-hmm. you for COVID and put you in the position to be able to do what you did and actually grow the brand during that very difficult time?
We were so fortunate. I don't know what we would have done without those trucks. And then, the state fair was canceled that year. Which led us to our partnership with Golden Chick, where for 8 weeks we were in 187 stores in Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana, and so that was a really big partnership.
Wow.
That was helpful.
Yeah.
You and your brother Aaron, who's the CEO and co-owner, run the company on a day-to-day basis and own most of the company via a trust, which GG is the trustee. GG, you also remain actively involved in the business. How do the three of you make important strategic decisions? For example, like delving into new products or buying trucks?
Well, for the most part, I try to just sit in the chair and listen to them and wait for them to want, my feedback, which is what should be happening. And I'm happy to do that. And they bounce things around. Aaron is good at what he does. He's a great CEO, and he's very calm and strategic, and he likes to he thinks about things. And so he guides us well, I believe. Amber sees the marketing end of it and whether it's possible or that's a good idea to go into. And so I think they do a good job of that. And we also, tried to reach out, to my nephew too, because he's part of the business too, and get their feedback. So I think it works really well.
Has there ever been a time when the three of you couldn't agree?
Oh, sure.
And how did you handle that?
I go out for a walk. I really do, because if I'm the one that's questioning it and I'm just like white knuckling because of experience that I've had that maybe they haven't had, and I question it, I'll give that to them, and then I'll just think, well, this is either going to be great or it's going to be a great learning experience. And I think that's best. And they seem to, to defer one to the other, or they compromise.
So one of my sayings is, you never fail in anything as long as you learn something.
That's exactly right.
And that's the only way you can learn, is if you let them do it.
Yeah, and they have.
You're a great leader.
Well, I try. I try.
Well, I think with my brother and I, when ideas come and maybe someone's on this side and someone's on that side, it's somewhat between a boxing match in a courthouse. We're stating our case, why we should or shouldn't do this. And I think my brother and I have really gotten good at hearing each other out. And even if we're disagreeing, hearing each other out and then going away to think about it and then coming back and saying, you know what, I think that's a great idea. Or, you know what, I think this. And so I think we've really learned how to communicate and also kind of value the others. Like Aaron is fantastic on the business side, and I really enjoy the marketing side. And with that, I see opportunities, and I want to say yes to everything. And Aaron's really good at saying no. And I think that actually just balances us out so well. Yeah. But it's taken us a few years to get here, but I feel that we've just really made a good team on stating our cases and then having a moment and then coming back. And then I think once we make a decision, we both have peace moving forward. And so I think we're really fortunate with that.
Have you ever tabled a decision just because you couldn't come to an agreement and been okay with that?
I think that's when we go to our mother and then we state our case.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been things that one of us wanted, the other one didn't, and we don't. And maybe we'll come back and maybe we'll all agree that, that wasn't a good idea. But really looking back, we don't have any regrets.
Yeah, that's a great quality that you and your brother have. One, you have different strengths, and you both recognize that, and that you appreciate those strengths, and that you can walk away and think about things and come back and say, you know what, I've thought about this some more, and maybe we ought to reconsider.
Well, I think it's what helps is that I think I really trust his wisdom and his expertise. Like she said, he's the calm one. I feel like he's an amazing leader. And so I think by having that trust in him, even if it's something I emotionally really want to do, I can at least feel peaceful in his decision that it's maybe not the best thing or the best time. And so while I might be disappointed, I at least feel secure that I know he's still leading us to a better place.
One thing they've grown into, and I talk about them growing into their strengths, and I've noticed that if a bad decision's made and we have to kind of work it out through contract or whatever means, they've learned to come back and say, I'm sorry, that wasn't really a good idea. Especially, our CEO, Aaron, because a lot of the final things will end with him. But he's really strong in that he'll come and say, that wasn't a good idea. Or if someone even calls him on it, he'll say, man, I appreciate that. I'm so glad because you're right.
Yeah, and that's a great quality to be able to look back and say, okay, it wasn't the greatest decision, but what can we learn from that?
Exactly.
And it sounds like you guys do that really, really well. As the business, after Skip passed away in 2017,
correct.
I'm sure there were some challenges with transitioning then. What were a couple of challenges, or a challenge that you had after Skip's passing in transitioning to new leadership?
I think just like we've talked about, is because it was pretty sudden. You're never expecting it to happen. I say fortunately, it was in January, so we had time, and it was also right before our 80th anniversary. So we had time to prepare and had the opportunity to celebrate that, and the State Fair gave us the approval to celebrate Skip as well as part of that celebration. So it gave us some time to just sort of ease into it. But there was a lot of fear. I know Amber and Aaron both kind of, because they had not been in the decision-making end of it. So they felt sort of a heaviness that they had to really do as well as their dad. And so the first year was a little difficult. You know, we tried to just take our time with it and stay balanced. And at the same time, we were still grieving, you know, because that was a great loss. And he was a great force. I mean, everyone knew him. You just can't live up to him. Yeah. So, but I think we did really well. I think we took our time. And then, of course, you know, we had to deal with COVID a couple of years later. And there were some challenges, you know, there's always, within the family, there were some challenges, but I think we finally got through those things. And some of it was bittersweet, and some of it was really sad, and some of it was joyful. And then we all survived the first fair, and we were really happy.
Yeah. Well, Amber, what was it like for you to unexpectedly have to take the baton, you and Aaron?
I mean, there was a lot of grieving, so I don't think I was thinking clearly. And I think one of the biggest things is we were still doing just the state fair, so it was a once-a-year operation. And so there weren't really roles that we weren't sure what our roles would be. And we know we had to kind of carve out our roles over the last few years. It's a very bittersweet fair. I mean, I was missing my dad, but I was proud to carry on the legacy. But I think the biggest thing was that I was comparing myself just starting in an ownership role to my dad's end of his ownership role. Look at my dad. He was so wise and smart and funny, and he did great interviews, and he just made decisions. And I was comparing all of the years of experience he had that kind of be his final best self to, well, I'm at year one. And it took, a coach of mine to just kind of make that clear to me. And I was just really...
that's not a fair comparison.
Yeah, well, and it definitely wasn't a fair comparison. But in my mind, I felt like I needed to be him in that way. And so I was really beating myself up. And my business coach said the most amazing thing to me, which was, what if who you are right now is who you need to be to get the job done? And those other things are going to come along the way. Yeah. And so it really helped me enjoy myself at the present moment and the journey that I was on, and to not compare my beginning to his end. And like I said, it took several years for us to kind of carve out our roles. That first year, I think we were really it was a mixture between grieving and celebrating. So
that is such great insight for family businesses in transition and for next generations taking over. Thank you so much for sharing that. What advice do you guys have for other families who are trying to perpetuate their business through the generations? Any other advice that you would have for them?
Well, I think the things that we've said, that not to be too hard on yourself, and especially if you're a family business, to know that you're not always going to agree. Depending on the age or at what point you're coming into that business, like Amber said, if you have roles and strengths that you're already aware of that are carved out, then take those, and then let the person that's in the other role handle what they're supposed to do, and try not to cross over as much. But in a family business, there's a lot of crossover. Yep. Like we say in our family business, if the trash needs to be picked up, you pick up the trash. You're not any better than anybody else that's out here. You jump in and you cook a corny dog, or you do whatever is needed to be done. And so I think that's important too. It's good to have your strengths, know your role, but also know that you are a family business, and and to be respectful and to be patient. And that's a big part of it right there. Be patient and be respectful of each other. Yeah.
Well, it also sounds like you guys lead from the front. When I heard about you're at the state fair every day from 10 to 10 with the troops and working together with them side by side, that's a great example. Great quality of a leader.
We love our employees. I mean, they're just like family, and they love seeing us there, because they especially love when we can go in and jump in and cook a corny dog or light a stove, and they go, "Oh, I didn't know you could do that."
when we'll jump in and maybe dip some dogs, whether it's for ourselves or our employees, get so excited. They're like, "Oh, big boss, Amber's in here cooking corny." They're so excited. They're so fun. But I heard a phrase a couple years ago. It said there's two types of family businesses. There's a family first family business and a business first family business. And so I feel that, we're fortunate in that I think we all settled into the roles that we wanted to have, but I think it's important to know what is it that you really want to do with the company. Like for us, I feel there's so many opportunities and we really had to focus on what we wanted. But I also think it goes back to we try to put the company first. And if there's something in the family that's going on that might not be best, we just really have to put the business first. Otherwise, it may not be successful. It may not carry on. And so I think just kind of having that business first focus has been helpful as well.
It's great advice. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Well, I can't tell you guys how much I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me today. And your insights have been incredible, just really incredible. And I know they're going to be very helpful to our viewers and listeners. I have one more question I ask everybody that I interview, and that's what's bigger than business for GG and Amber Fletcher?
That family and spending time with the family. For me, of course, I'm sort of easing my way into retirement. We'll see how that goes, or at least taking more time off and doing some traveling. So that's become really big for me. Spending time with some of my more extended family, and just taking time to not have to think about the business all the time and not worrying about it, that it's going to go the direction. We always say, like for the state fair, once it starts, there's nothing we can do. The ball's rolling
Just
and
let it roll,
it's just going to roll. And that's pretty much the way it is with any of it.
Isn't it nice that you can have the peace of mind to take more time off, to travel, knowing that the business is in such good hands?
Yes, yeah, that's really awesome.
I'm
I'm very proud of all of them. They've done a great job stepping up, and I love seeing that they enjoy it, and that they also know that it's important to take time off, so they have other interests and things. But I think it's going to be around for a lot longer. Yeah,
no doubt. Yeah, Fletcher's is going to be here forever. It's got to be. Amber, how about you? What's bigger than business for Amber Fletcher?
I mean, my family is certainly the most important thing in my life, and spending time, I feel time is so precious, especially after losing a parent. You realize just how precious time is. And but I also have other passions. I really love speaking and writing and just storytelling, and hopefully continuing to develop stories that will help people heal. And I have some personal stories of overcoming, and so my goal is to share those more and to hopefully give people hope.
Well, good. I look forward to reading those and seeing those as you develop them. I'm sure they're going to be good knowing you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you both again. You're wonderful,
you.
and I appreciate you very much.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you.